To me, food insecurity signifies the heart-wrenching feeling of not knowing where your next meal will come from and the constant worry about providing for your loved ones. It's a challenge that strips away dignity and potential, hindering individuals and communities from breaking the cycle of poverty. Addressing food insecurity isn't just about alleviating hunger, it's about restoring hope, health, and a sense of security.
When I think about food insecurity, I see Caracas avenues filled with expensive restaurants whose garbage is regularly visited by children and elderly looking for food scraps.
I am thinking of the families who are in cities in Ukraine where fighting is taking place. Families who have not been able to flee, and supplies to cities have been blocked. They have no certainty that if they had something to eat today, someone will help them tomorrow.
I encountered a client seeking eldercare assistance. This individual, once a thriving businessman with a family, faced a series of unexpected setbacks. He lost everything, his business, even a limb and his mobility. His needs encompassed food deliveries from a food bank. It was astonishing to consider that an individual who was college educated and led a successful career could confront such adversity. This experience underscored that food insecurity knows no bounds.
Food insecurity looks like a dead forest, a breakdown of the complete ecosystem.
Despite our economic strength, millions of Americans are forced to make tough decisions when it comes to their daily meals. How can a community be healthy and thrive if its people are underfed and undernourished? Every day, United Way works alongside those seeking to dismantle barriers to healthy food.
The two-time winning Nobel laureate Marie Curie said, "You cannot hope to build a better world without improving the individuals." This morning, I want to talk for a few minutes about an existential issue that millions of the people around the world are confronted with every single day, and that is food insecurity. The video you just watched asks what is both a very simple and actually a very highly complex question. What is food insecurity? You probably noticed that we did not ask that right at the outset, and that's because there is no singular, uniform answer to this question. Food insecurity has different meanings in different communities. Instead of asking, what is food insecurity? The real question to ask is, what does food insecurity mean to you? All of us gathered here this morning understand that access to food is not a given. Accessibility may not be an issue that we personally have had to confront. In fact, we may take it for granted. However, it is a very real issue for millions of our global neighbors. Does food insecurity manifest differently throughout the world? Yes. Is the understanding in the eye of the beholder? Yes. Is food insecurity an individual problem or a community problem? It's both. Like our prevailing food security question, depending on where you live and what you believe, the answer to why we are here today examining a growing crisis is no simple matter. I admit, I definitely do not have all of the answers. But what I do know is that affordable, equitable, and safe access to food, water, and shelter are under serious threat for hundreds of millions of our neighbors. Earlier this year, the World Food Program reported that 258 million people across 58 countries and territories faced acute food insecurity at crisis or worse levels in 2022. Worryingly, that number rose over the 2021 figure of 193 million and still represents but a fraction of the estimated 811 million people, more than 10% of the world's population, that go to sleep hungry every night. Economic, political, and environmental events that continue to destabilize communities around the world will likely lead to an increase in the number of people facing food insecurity this year. I stand before you today to state unequivocally that food insecurity is a humanitarian problem, and it is up to us to resolve it. We do not find ourselves at this crossroads because of a singular era, invention, or need. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." We all know that we need food to survive. Food is an essential element for our brains to function and bodies to flourish. When we're hungry, we immediately begin to think about or seek out our next meal. I imagine that we can all agree that rarely have any of us performed at our best selves when we are hungry. When I speak about hunger in this case, I mean the temporary feeling of hunger, which usually occurs as a result of a time constraint that we're up against, or not having convenient access to food in that moment. But people who are living with the day-to-day reality of food insecurity experience hunger not because of inconvenience or time constraints, but rather geographic, social, and economic constraints. These factors are not singular. They overlap and intersect. Price controls have formed the basis of food insecurity in Venezuela. Abject poverty, conflict, and gender inequality are contributing factors in Nigeria. Price shocks, imbalanced income and spending, and inequitable access to education have been identified as reasons for food insecurity in Vietnam. And let's take a look from other perspectives. Inadequate and dilapidated infrastructure makes transporting food a challenge for many parts of the world. Storing food is difficult, if not impossible, when you lack electricity to preserve and conserve it. Food security is not just a rural problem, it is also an urban problem. As we all know, agricultural zones form the focus of every nation's productivity. Our production capability is tied directly to our ability to grow or import food to feed the population. There aren't many, if any, farms within the city limits in Belfast, or Buenos Aires, Los Angeles, or Lagos, or Auckland, or Abu Dhabi. But those cities serve as major population zones for their respective countries, and therefore are heavily reliant on the agricultural zones, often many kilometers away. Across most of my home country in the United States, public transportation is non-existent, which forces my fellow Americans to be heavily reliant on personal automobiles. Economically challenged neighborhoods in many major cities lack grocery stores, forcing people to commute several kilometers away to the nearest store to stock their fridges and pantries with provisions. Imagine how challenging that is if you live in a city where there is no public transportation and you don't own a vehicle, even for city dwellers who have access to public transportation like New York City and Chicago and Washington, D.C. Those living in economically challenged neighborhoods lose time currency, as going to the store and returning home can take several hours due to their dependency on public transportation, bus and train schedules to transport them across town. So if you haven't picked up on it by now, I am pondering these questions from my point of view and understanding. Now I want to pose a few for you to consider. How does food insecurity impact all of us gathered here today? I imagine all of us enjoyed a meal, perhaps several, throughout the course of yesterday, and will do so again today. Food insecurity may not touch us directly, but it nevertheless reaches us indirectly. And I know you're thinking how. Leslie Cornfield, the founder and CEO of the National Education and Equity Lab, famously said, "Talent is equally distributed. Opportunity is not." Let me repeat that. Talent is equally distributed. Opportunity is not. All of us here come from different parts of the world via different life paths. We were all blessed with and seized the opportunity that enabled us to facilitate our work and convene here together as one young world. Yet, despite all of our individual talents and capabilities, education and accolades, we know we are not the only people capable of transforming the world into a better place. Millions of people in cities big and small across the globe cannot contribute their talents to solving the world's biggest challenges because of barriers like food insecurity. Think about that for a second. Someone somewhere might have the talent to find a cure for cancer or innovate a device that simplifies a complex process. But we, the global community, will never benefit from it simply because that person's lack of food security has adversely harmed their health and impairs their brain functionality. Their full participation in society is hindered because they lack the most basic and fundamental of resources needed to survive. Food insecurity affects all of us because we lose future leaders. We lose economic resources. We lose time. And we lose talent. And you know what? We cannot afford to lose any of that. We as a civilization must consider our stewardship of this beautiful planet. Integral to the mission is how we treat our fellow human beings and the tools we give them to thrive. Not merely exist, but thrive. I liken the human ability to thrive with that of iron, one of the strongest metals on the planet. Iron is nearly indestructible, save for its own rust when it corrodes from exposure to moist air and high temperatures. Like iron, we are strong when molded to a purpose. And like iron, we too may begin to experience corrosion. The ills of society, war, discrimination, poverty, and food insecurity, to name a few, initiate our self-corrosion. It is within our hands to eliminate these phenomena. Yet, they continue to corrode, and not just the people who they directly impact, but humanity as a whole. My neighbor's insecurity means that I am not secure. Do you get that? My neighbor's insecurity means that I am not secure. Have we allowed neglect, indifference, and irresponsibility to corrupt the foundation of our hard-earned existence? To corrupt our perfect ecosystem, our food, air, and water? If the answer is yes, then why do we continue to do it? What is it about human nature that we continue to engage in activities that corrode our individual selves and humanity at large? Why can't we resolve right here and right now these issues? As I've already noted, it is clear to me that as we forged our place as the paramount species, we did not necessarily do so in the most responsible of ways. All decisions have consequences. Although the lessons appear to be harsh and analogous to despair, there is hope. Rust does not void iron's purpose or utility. Oil cleans and restores the integrity of iron. Museums around the world display ironworks from throughout history that have been restored by curators to reflect their original detail and purpose. As I look at all of you, I don't see leaders. I see curators. Come on, curators. So in my role as President and CEO of United Way Worldwide, I am connected to communities throughout the world. I have learned that food insecurity is more complex than the hunger that is caused by famine, drought, and war. It is more complex than the geographical and topographical features of where we live. What I am seeing is a cycle of missing meals and unaffordability of nutritious foods. These shortfalls are unyielding, unintended consequences, including indifference for the plight of those needing reliable access to food. While the amount of arable land varies country to country, it is a fact that there is more than enough arable land capable of feeding the entire human race. Therefore, food insecurity does not come from a lack of food production. Rather, it comes from the lack of will, from farm to table. So here's my call to action for you curators. You yourselves individually are like rods of iron. Each of you were born on this planet to perform a specific purpose. And I want to commission you to your purpose. I want to commission you to stay strong like iron is strong. I want to commission you to keep going, no matter how corrosive the community that you live in, the country that you live in, the experiences that you may encounter along the way. And just remember this, you are a curator. And if you ever feel like you're getting weak or the things that are around you are corroding you, just look to the person to your right. Okay, that way. Look to the person to your left, that way, and say to each other, I got you. Thank you. Thanks.
I keep on learning ways to take care of my daughter's health. I used to boil water to feed my family. Now we installed a filter, which ensures healthy and clean water.
I have a garden and I've greatly invested in farming here in Ghana. During harvest season, I get farm produce for myself, friends, and family.
I try not to put more than I can eat on my plate so that uneaten food doesn't have to end up in the trash. And also to not waste food. When we have surplus vegetables or fruits, my mother makes packages and I offer them to the neighbors.
I'm optimistic that the younger generation is more attuned and aligned with social issues and therefore more likely to spend time and energy in resolving them.
I hope that the younger generation will continue to promote mutual aid and solidarity, so that there's no shame in facing food insecurity.